the discussion and the understanding of the positive ego and the understanding of the authentic self have to be kind of investigated together, because it's probably, in my opinion, one of the most difficult concepts that we have in Andrew's teaching. And I find it incredibly challenging to make these distinctions in oneself, and also to explain it in a way that it actually lands. Because, and I'm sure we will see that when we have a conversation about the difference between positive ego and authentic self, it's not always straightforward, and sometimes you hit paradoxes. And to kind of show that, I wrote a little text today that I shared in the WhatsApp group, and that I want to read first here for us as a starting point, because I feel like it's a good way to get tuned into this very profound, deep, complex, paradoxical, and in the end, very simple question of the difference between positive ego and the authentic self. From positive ego to authentic self, there is a part of us that must grow up to speak with integrity, act with courage, and stand for the good, even when fear beckons retreat. This is the positive ego, not narcissistic, not inflated, but earned, one conscious choice at a time. It is the foundation of spiritual adulthood. Without it, awakening collapses under the weight of our unresolved past. Yet it is not the summit. Beyond the positive ego lies the authentic self, not shaped by biography or culture, but arising from the future, from the evolutionary impulse itself, seeking to awaken through you. It is not your personal self. When it comes alive, you know, this is who I truly am. The positive ego gives structure. The authentic self gives direction. Together they form a bridge, but eventually that bridge must be surrendered. To live from the authentic self is to be led by a higher order of being, to become the living expression of Spirit's creative will. You are no longer choosing, you are being lived by the truth. No longer seeking freedom, you are freedom in action, not transcending the world, but transforming it. The positive ego makes the leap possible. The authentic self is the one who arises beyond the leap and never looks back. This is the path of the awakened evolutionary human, an instrument of the future, awake in the now. I find it fascinating to contemplate positive ego and authentic self like this, because as you can hear in this text and in every contemplation that you probably have had in yourself, there is always that point of paradox where the question arises. There are many questions that arise. One is, does the positive ego still have to be transcended? And if yes, what does that mean? Is the authentic self in itself a self? Or is it rather a state, an awakened state that falls on the positive ego and makes the positive ego shine even more than without the awakening? And it's interesting looking back in Andrew's teaching, there was a phase before 2013 where Andrew was clearly teaching that the authentic self and the ego, he often described it, are separate tracks, like railway tracks that never meet, that are parallel lines, and you either are located in your positive ego, or you are located in your authentic self. But then in the last 10 years, this slightly changed, or some, I would almost say sometimes changed in a beautiful way, saying, no, it's actually very important to develop a well-developed positive ego to allow the state of the authentic self to come through that positive ego and then shine into the world. And for me, this paradox, or we could call it, the mind would probably call it a paradox, needs to be held very lightly. And I love to just hold it as almost like both is true. It's true that one can go from ego to authentic self-identification, and you feel like you're a different human being. And if you have seen other people go from ego to authentic self, it's like a switch that is turned, and you have a different human being in front of you. Before, it was kind of a contracted, self-conscious human being, and then when this person can let go and the authentic self can come through, you have a different person in front of you. You can see it, you can feel it. The transmission is different. The realness of the person, the authenticity of the person is totally different. So in that sense, there is a lot of truth in saying ego and authentic self never meet. But then when you look from a little bit a different angle into the same jewel, you can also see that as incarnated human beings here and now, our personality structure, our individuality always is the carrier of whatever we express through our spiritual development. We cannot get out of our shell totally. It's whatever is happening with us, whatever awakening that we can experience, that we can express, it's always expressed differently through me, through Daniela, than it is expressed through Vincent or Ugis or Stefan or Connie. And that will never change. That means the personality structure, however we want to call it, positive ego, personality, is always involved in how we express our awakening. And that's good, that's encouraging, that's beautiful, that's something to be embraced. And at the same time, we also want to take very seriously that if we only cultivate our positive ego in the sense of self-development, becoming better human beings, becoming more evolved human beings, becoming more compassionate, intelligent human beings, this is not yet leading to awakening. You can be a very beautiful human being without being connected to the awakening to the authentic self. And that's also true. That's an experience that is real and true. And also that this awakening to the authentic self needs a surrender to something higher, to spirit, to the evolutionary impulse. So something smaller surrenders to something bigger, just to land in the oneness of everything. Then again, this is again a paradox. I cannot say it differently. I'm aware that I'm putting out paradoxes here because in a way it's a duality to say something has to surrender to something else. And at the same time, this is the process of spiritual awakening. The small self surrenders to the big self. The small self melts into the big self. The small self says, thy will be done, not mine. And then the miracle happens, and then the awakening can come through. And as we said before, the awakening then comes still through this body, mind, personality that I have developed over many years, over my lifetime, or probably several lifetimes. We don't know for sure how much we carry also from earlier lives. But I want to encourage you to be at peace with the paradoxes and not to see them as an obstacle, because I almost feel like the paradoxes make this path even more exciting, because it's this multidimensional process perspective that is so exciting and that is so liberating, and that leaves so much room for different expressions, viewpoints, different ways of looking at things, at questions, different ways of asking ourselves the spiritual questions, the philosophical questions, the questions of how to live a good life, how you and how to stay awake, how to become better human beings. And it's such a beautiful, rich of facets way of looking at life and at our development. Yeah, that's probably what I wanted to say at the beginning. And I would probably like to start with asking Scott, what questions are you? Wait, I have to open here. Let me do that. Yeah, now you can unmute.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. You know, like I had mentioned in the WhatsApp post, that so much of, you know, spiritual teaching I've interpreted as is like you have to go beyond the ego, and that any sort of self-seeking was not in the right direction. And but at the same time, that leads to, I guess, like I'm trying to find a way to like trust myself, which comes back to like I'm trying to do it right, kind of, you know, which is ego stuff. But I liked what you said about the authentic self being almost like a state that informs the ego. And also what you said about like how you can see the energy in people, like when you're in a retreat or something and coming in with like the ego defenses, and when that melts away, all of a sudden you see, you know, the shining self. And so I wonder, to me, if this would hold true in the sense that I think of it basically as like the dichotomy of love and fear. And so, you know, the negative ego would be the structures that are created from a fear based, and then the positive ego is based, you know, from the authentic self being an expression of love, eros, you know, whatever. And that there's an aspect of, like Wilber talks about, transcend and include, and that there's a healthy expression and a pathological expression for each of those. And so that as we, you know, express this authentic self level, there's the healthy expression, and then the positive ego, and then the pathological expression, which is the negative ego. And
Can I offer one
yes.
addition here that I find important? It just inside Andrew's teaching, all my responses always kind of come from the teaching framework that we are going into here. And in Andrew's framework, the authentic self is not individual. That sounds now strange again, but it's the authentic self. Your authentic self and my authentic self is the same authentic self. It's the energy, it's the evolutionary impulse, it's the energy that animates the creation of the universe. It's when we wake up to the animating force that created the universe, and that animating force hits our body, mind, personality. What comes out on the other side, like this energy coming through your positive ego, expresses itself as your authentic self. But the authentic self essence itself is not personal. And I find that very important, because the teaching here, what I love in this teaching is that it's a transpersonal teaching. It takes away from this over overly personalizing. It's all about me and my development and my improvement. It's actually the contrary. It's I want to let go of all my personal stuff and be available for the force that has created the universe, and then see how I can be of service for the whole.
Right. Yeah, and you're right. That is an important distinction for me as far as, so then, and then this is kind of where it lands with that, is that trying to trust, so if I want to shine, then, where is that for the aggrandizement of Scott versus when am I living and growing for the good of the whole? And that's a difficult thing for me to navigate, or I think for anybody, because it's not all or nothing, you know what I mean? And so, there can be sort of ego stroking that comes from showing up in the world a certain way. But then, for me personally, I have a hard time being in integrity with my motivation and knowing, what is it for? And and I guess that's taking the time to actually try to be in the moment, and like you say, just be a vessel for the energy to kind of come through the filter of my positive ego, rather than, and so one of the things that I've kind of narrowed it down to is like, instead of like, what's in it for me, how can I help? And as like, if I'm focusing on being helpful, then I feel like that is a safe avenue for me to express and trust that it's coming from, I guess you would say, through the, channeling the authentic self rather than my negative ego.
Yes and no. I would say yes and no. The thing is, I don't believe that there are this kind of simple rules when we can be kind of sure that it's
I
more
want the
authentic self, because
recipe, Daniela.
I
I just
know,
want the recipe.
I don't want to go there. No, because look, the thing is, you can have very, very serving people that are very egoic motivated. Serving itself, I don't think, and I'm not saying they can live beautiful lives and do a lot of good, but I'm talking now about the spiritual aspects of who is awake and who is not. How surrendered are we to the bigger to God, to spirit? And if I would have to give you, if you would press me for one recipe, you know what it would be? I would say the authentic self. It's always the ego that asks the questions. Am I now in the authentic self or in the ego? The authentic self doesn't it doesn't care for this question. It's not something that the authentic self would be busy with. You know what I mean? Because the authentic self is a force. It's a leaning into the next moment, every single moment, in the presence of what is arising, to respond. And it wouldn't be busy with questions of, am I doing it now or not? It's just you either are it or not. You know what I mean? It's pretty binary.
It very much reminds me of the Taoist and the way. And it's like, if you're asking if you're in the way, you're not in the way.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of truth in that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I feel much clearer about that whole aspect now, and I'm grateful for that, because I think that psychologically, with this sort of negative ego labeling, it it's it just you know, at least for me, and I think most of us that are interested in this kind of thing, you know, we tend to want to intellectualize, and like I say, you know, just give me the list, just give me the right map, and then I'll go walk and get there. And having this, you know, and I've like shame has been a big thing in my life, and kind of let go of that, and the this negative ego and this sense of like this is who I am, and that I have to overcome this bad part of me. um, you know, this gives a different framework to say, well, I can be my individual, you know, whatever it is, like the self, you know, my culture, my programming, but that there, you know, to say that there's, you know, that's not automatically bad that you're trying to leave behind. You know, I used to think of this bad part like, just give me a scalpel and I will cut that thing out and be done with it and move on.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you realize that it's all part of the whole.
It's part of the whole, but it's also good to just see it and not act from it. I think there is choice also there. There is agency there. I mean, with the negative, before we were talking about the positive ego, and that's just the vessel that the awakening can come through. With the negative ego, we want to see it and then decide to not act from it. If we are constantly victimized, we can just decide not to be victimized anymore and take full responsibility for who we are and how we have come here. Not be victimized, not blame anybody else for the life we are having right now, and take full responsibility. This is a big step, but it's a big part of this teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a choice, I have no doubt. And it's not, you are right, it's not about cutting it out. It's about seeing it and deciding, this is not what I want to act from. This is not what I identify with. This is not me. I know who I am. I know that I am a higher self, a bigger self, and I'm not acting from this small self
Mm-hmm.
concerns anymore. I just don't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And let it go. Like, just drop it.
So simple, not so easy.
No, but worth pursuing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Scott.